Continuation. Well, here in Vancouver, it's 8:14. Joining us is my colleague Alexandra Gertsan, as well as our guest today, entrepreneur and libertarian Denis Eliseevich. Good morning, Sasha. Denis, good afternoon to you. Glad to see you and glad to hear you.
Hi, Dennis. I'm being so informal because we already know each other. And the reason we met was our beloved Gennady Balashov, who passed away 2 weeks ago. Yes, I understand today is the 24th and Gennady Viktorovich died on November 11th. And my first question, Dennis, for you is, this one, when we talked with Gennady, he always said that he was waiting for changes. The changes have started, and I can't stop thinking about it. Denis, the changes began recently, yesterday, the day before, and today. You did 2 streams yesterday on Sunday evening, and you said something. Now, you can't not do this because everything is changing literally by the hour, not even by the day. So I want to ask you, how do you say it correctly? Is this like some kind of incredible evil that Balashov was waiting for change for so long, and as soon as he was gone, it started? What is this?
No, it's just the irony of fate, only with the negative context, so to speak. It's all very unpleasant, and I'm sure if Gennady saw all this, then morally he would have been uplifted, and from there, everything would have only gone up.
So basically, he just didn't have enough time. Yes.
Or maybe just one day.
Or just one day. And it just doesn't go away, literally. I listen to you all the time now. Your channel is wonderful. By the way, I want to tell our listeners and viewers that since I've known Denis for less time than Gennady Viktorovich Balashov, who for me hasn't left, because of his strong spirit that he brought here to Radio Vira, I've now literally attached myself to Denis. Literally, because I watch your channel nonstop. Your stream yesterday really affected me, even though I don't live in Ukraine. But it's your charisma, literally, and most importantly, the information and the way you present it. Yesterday, you said a phrase like this. I even wrote down that when you talked about this plan, the plan that nowadays everyone is talking about, you mentioned 3 key questions. They are neutrality, the Russian language, and freedom of religion. I want
you, Denis,
to ask you, Denis, how everything that's happening today affects you as a Ukrainian living in the United States, living there out of necessity.
Well, it affects me a lot. I live with this, you could say. As you correctly said, I was forced to emigrate. I would have gladly not emigrated. And of course, my family is mostly there. My friends are there too. I want to return to Ukraine. I just can't live in a dictatorship, and that's why I need democracy in my homeland. And of course, I worry about all of this and try to do everything I can. And if I say something, it's only because someone has to say it.
I want Ukraine. I want to live in Ukraine. I want to live in Ukraine. Diana Kamzin wrote this.
Yes, but I think it will recover. There seems to be an electrical problem.
Touch anything?
I don't see Denis. I see you.
Everything's fine.
Denis. Well, of course, I want to ask you today, right now, about this plan. When you talked about it, you mentioned 5 points that made the strongest impression on you. I also recall the 16th and more. That was last night. What's changed since then? And could you share with us your impressions of what's happening right now?
Well, right now, as we know, the plan has been reduced to 19 points. And actually, even the points of the plan that I read out are not what was really there. It was about 70% relevant from the start. Actually, there are other points there that were decided not to be leaked to the press, and now they've cut it down to 19 again, ones we don't know about. We only know what I read. They dropped the proposal to use $100 billion in Russian assets to rebuild Ukraine at the European Union's request. In a way, it directly shows the European Union's interest in this whole situation.
So the interest of the European Union, do you mean the desire to continue the war?
Yes.
I'm like that. We have this pen, it seems normal.
Let me try on another camera, not such a good one. Let's try it like this.
No, the image is fine now.
I'll switch the camera in the settings. Maybe it'll be better that way.
All right, Dennis, go ahead. I'll ask a few questions after.
Yes, thank you. Well, I would still like to start by saying that this Trump peace plan has been called nothing less than Ukraine's capitulation from the very beginning. Do you agree with that definition? I mean, based on the points that were originally included there, that's how we saw it out of 28.
No, that's definitely not capitulation, and there's not even a hint of capitulation there. Capitulation actually has a pretty clear definition. It's essentially the armed forces surrendering, meaning the Russian flag should have been in Kiev. That's not the case here. This is a compromise, similar to what happened between Finland and the Soviet Union during their conflict. I'm not saying this is good for Ukraine. A good ending to such a war theoretically couldn't even exist, given how it all went. The best option for us was to end it. In May 2022, the Russian army took a hard hit. Putin was very accommodating. And in Istanbul, there wasn't even 60% or 70% of what he's asking for now. Well, that wasn't done. That wasn't done. Each time, with every new window, I switch the camera, but the same thing keeps happening.
Uh-huh.
Well, I think it will get better now.
I
don't know. It's hard to say. Something's wrong with the connection. Because we don't really have any problems. I mean, with the connection right now, it's fine. Yeah.
Please continue. Let's go on.
Let's not pay attention to that. All right.
That's why there's no capitulation here. Ukraine is in a difficult situation. There can't be a good end to the war. It can only be catastrophic or very bad. This is a very bad option. Catastrophic would be to continue. Because then the next condition, the next window for negotiations will be completely different, much worse.
Dennis. Well, of course, there's a lot of talk going around about territories. And just a few hours ago, RBC Ukraine, yes, published information that Ukraine and the United States have agreed on most points of the peace plan. And the issue of territory and Ukraine's accession to NATO will be discussed by both Zelensky and Trump. So, regarding the territories, how would you comment on that?
You know, I think the main thing in this situation is not the territories, but the main thing in this situation is the issues that affect the future of Ukraine, its well-being, and its democracy. Because you could have had the territory of 1991 and nothing would come of it. If Ukraine keeps the same level of corruption as before, the situation will stay the same and nothing will change.
Dennis, tell me, please, can you see us now? No?
Yes, I can see you.
And I can't see you at all. I mean, like, yes.
Our picture is really distorted. Let's try maybe leaving and joining again, Dennis, if it's not too much trouble for you. Because our picture is really, it's frozen. We can't really tell what's going on. We stopped seeing your camera. But now it's fine, yes.
Wonderful.
I understand why it's happening this way now.
I think I have a bad suspicion about why this is happening. Honestly, after everything happening today, I'm starting to believe in conspiracy theories myself. Dennis, you know what I wanted to ask? When you announced yesterday that you were coming, we received a lot of questions. I don't know if it's the right time for them or not, but I'll ask one of them.
Ask.
Dennis, what he thinks the Trump administration wants from Ukraine.
What exactly the administration wants Ukraine to be flexible about and to end this war?
Subtitles created by Dima Torzok. What do you think can or does Zelensky want to end the war, but what will be the reaction of the Ukrainian people if, for example, he agrees to sign this agreement, or how?
And most of the military, you know, those I talked to in the military, 99% have wanted the war to end for a very long time. And all civilians will be happy when the war ends. That's 100%. The only ones who won't be happy are those who profit from it, or those who gained high social status because of this war, which they didn't have before the war. But the end for Zelensky will be, well, Zelensky's end will be bad. In any case, whatever decision he makes, he no longer has a political future. He has no rating. I don't know what his team is telling him or what kind of picture he's painting for himself, and he's in a warm bath. But now, after everything he's done, he needs to at least try, at least as much as possible, to save face in the end.
Can Ukraine keep its United States alliance without meeting Washington's demands? Subtitles by Dima Torzok.
But we don't have an alliance with the United States. We're partners, and even that is on very thin ice, so to speak. I've long supported an alliance with the United States, but Ukraine must change for that to happen. An alliance can only be mutual when you have something to offer, and we do have something to offer, but only under the condition of proper capitalist leadership.
And for us, an alliance with the United States means fulfilling Washington's requirements. How do your acquaintances and friends, let's say, feel about the possibility that Donbas and Luhansk regions might become part of Russia?
I usually avoid answering that kind of question, and I'll tell you why. Because if I answer it now, it's like I'm taking on part of Zelensky's responsibility, even though I don't have any direct levers of influence over it. If I say I don't care, let Donbas be Russian, they'll claim I'm giving territory to Putin.
By now,
If I say we can't give up Donbas, I'd be a hypocrite unless I took a rifle and went to the front.
so is Zelensky in a similar situation now? No, you don't think so?
As a politician, he knew the risks. This war was avoidable, so he had leverage. I didn't have any leverage. My only leverage is my audience. So I can tell you this. To put it another way, to rephrase, land is not worth a human life. This is my strong belief, and human life is the core value of Western civilization. If we see ourselves as part of Western civilization, then Ukraine must value people and end the war. And I want to draw your attention to this once again. I agree with Alexandra. The main issues are neutrality, the Russian language, and freedom of religion. This isn't for Putin or because Russia wants it. This is a matter of Ukrainian democracy. And I support privatization. There's a lot of talk about security guarantees in the future. But in reality, if these countries that sign on to security guarantees, what do they call them? NATO style, Article 5 of NATO, if they want, they won't fulfill them. We all understand this perfectly well. The main security guarantee is Ukraine's internal life. A country with 3,500 state-owned enterprises and millions of officials like Ukraine can't be uncorrupt. Every third person on the street is an official. That's not normal. A country like that will always be corrupt, weak, and poor, leaving it constantly under threat. People like Putin cannibals for whom Ukraine next door is just something to take. This situation has happened now. So really, how are we going to live? We lived within the 1991 borders until 2014, until the end of 2013. Well, how did we handle that? You know, I'll tell you what it was like in Crimea. There was an overwhelming presence of the mafia, criminals, and Federal Security Service agents. There was a local parliament which had long been semi-separatist, and they all had, you know, like a mandatory program, land in Crimea near the sea. To build a small hotel, some little cafe, an apartment somewhere there. That was the mandatory program for officials. There were also those sanatoriums from the Soviet Union times, the privileged ones, as we call them. They used to go there to relax, enjoy those benefits, and feel privileged. Well, we lost Crimea, and I advocated for making something like, well, Las Vegas in Crimea, a gambling zone. A tax-free zone where light drugs, prostitution, and nearly everything are allowed. There should have been money there. It should have been a resort that could compete with Turkish resorts and others. What did Egypt do? They nearly gave the land and Crimea to Americans and corporations for hotels and more, all for free. They would have built hotels, and it would have thrived. That's a guarantee of security. Invite Elon Musk to Ukraine and offer optimal conditions for his factories. That's security. Privatize these state enterprises. Many are excellent. Billions of dollars will go to the treasury and our oligarchs won't be the buyers. It will definitely be Western countries. That's the guarantee of security when Ukraine is integrated into the global economy. And these papers, that's all. History shows you can choose not to fulfill them or only do so partially.
That's why
I don't take this seriously.
you just mentioned Egypt and Turkey as examples, but there are no drugs or prostitution at the resorts in either Egypt or Turkey.
But
On the contrary, it's actually the opposite, so to speak. Well, I don't want to offend anyone. Thailand, yes. and a lot of people love to go there, but let's just say it's probably hard to call Thailand a country with a strong economy. So in this case, I think it's a very controversial point when it comes to such open freedom. If you look at the American ones, let's say, take Florida, for example, of course, they don't have that either. So it's hard to say here. But again, in this peaceful sense, although right now we don't really know what it's like anymore, because that according to the Financial Times, he was reduced to 19 points. It's unclear what was removed or left. But the point is, as I understand it, that Russia hasn't even given its opinion yet. So it doesn't even know what was cut there, right? So that's why there's a big question here, of course, but it's very controversial. How would you comment on the point about reducing the Ukrainian army? Doesn't this directly affect Ukraine's security, including 5?
We're talking about 600,000 regular troops. That's not just a large army, that's an incredibly large army. Ukraine now has no choice but to build a professional army. People should go there intentionally, like in America. I'm unsure about Canada. It's his calling. He's signed a contract and he's a professional in service. How will Ukraine support 600,000 military personnel? Even if you consider an average of $1,000, that's not a high salary. First of all, the labor market is undermined because all men will be interested in joining the army instead of working in the private sector, which undermines Ukraine's economy. The second issue is how much funding the annual budget requires for such an army. Just for salaries alone, it amounts to billions of dollars. 600,000 people at $1,000 each equals $600 million monthly or 7.2 billion yearly. That's just salaries, let's say. And then there's the material base, which means it's a huge amount of money. Ukraine's pre-war budget was $40 billion. That's an impossible scenario. I believe a professional army shouldn't have more than 300,000 people, but the reserves need attention. In the reserves, all men and women starting from 18 years old should know how to shoot and provide first aid. It's not about forcing people into the fields, but using a modern market-based approach. Now they're recruiting instructors. You complete this, receive a conditional certificate, and you've met your duty for tough situations. Do you see the hypocrisy here? When it comes to saving the state for real, then in
Kyiv,
at the beginning of the war, they handed out Kalashnikov rifles en masse when there was a real existential threat, as soon as it was gone. And I, for example, if I can put it that way, advocate for the free ownership of firearms in Ukraine. No, you can't. You can't. Do you understand what the situation is?
by the way, Dennis, I've always wondered about this. Where did it all go afterwards? Because we saw how it was really being handed out. Literally, people would come up to the trucks and take things, almost just by showing their student identification, so to speak. But what happened next? The question is, what happened to all the weapons the population had?
Things turned out differently. Some returned them willingly, others did not.
So there was an order to return them? Yes, they started returning them later.
Dennis, do you know what just surprised me? When you were talking about Crimea, I'm actually from Crimea, and what you were saying, it felt to me like you had lived there. Like when you were saying that about how things were, about those sanatoriums and when people arrived, I left Crimea in 1990. It was already starting when these very wealthy people began to arrive. I mean, well, Ukrainian officials or government people, and they started buying up property there. That was only the beginning. But I remember very well when all these government sanatoriums, as you call them, along the coast, Burzu, Ufa, Miskor, Semismilas, Foros, Crimea is my home. And I witnessed all of this. Plus, there was such a ministry in Ukraine, probably not anymore. The main fruit and wine department of the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, these are all the wineries, the most elite, the wealthiest, the ones that really stood out. What is Crimea? Fruit and wine. So these were the ministers, I even remember their names, who would come and basically become the masters of the peninsula. So what you just described, I could see it all in my mind. I just don't know how you know it so well since you're not from Crimea, right? No.
I'm not from Crimea, but I used to vacation there as a child. The last time I was there was when I was still a professional athlete. It was in Sevastopol before the annexation. I always felt uneasy in Sevastopol. It felt like a Russian city at heart. And I subconsciously understood even then that this wouldn't lead to anything good. And you confirm the same attitude toward Crimea as toward all of Ukraine. It's like a piece of meat that these flies swarm over and tear apart. That's what happened to Ukraine. Its corrupt officials and politicians were tearing it apart. America had a weak president, so Putin, having gathered what he needed, decided to attack. Now we see the sad result, a full-scale invasion of Ukraine and annexed territory. Politicians allowed this and haven't faced any punishment. If Ukraine's structure isn't fundamentally changed, it's just a countdown to another crisis. War, whether hybrid or full-scale, always brings catastrophe.
I have a question for you, Dennis, about Elon Musk and his new program that allows you to determine people's locations, who is where. How do you explain the fact, Dennis, that some so-called publicly fighting figures are posting from Kiev, but the geolocation showed Dubai, Warsaw, Nice? I mean, of course, Ukrainian leaders.
Yes, that's it. What Musk did is really great. A media propaganda bubble formed, so people not living through war, unlike those in Ukraine, are unaware of its realities. They go around telling everyone, insulting people, saying that everyone should be at the front and that we have to fight until victory. In other words, another myth has fallen apart. Everyone already understood that something was wrong here. To put it mildly, but now it's already clearly proven. This is what propaganda is worth. This is the hypocrisy happening today in Ukraine, and it needs to end.
You said there will never be a perfect plan.
But after all,
somehow this situation, it can't last forever. Dennis, this war has to end someday, and there is no perfect plan. So what do we have?
there is an imperfect plan, there is a compromise you have to accept through gritted teeth. I'm not suggesting we sign those 28 points from the press without reviewing them. Of course, we should fight where we can, but I see key points there and let's say secondary points. And if I don't believe in this, of course, if we remove the points I'm talking about, then Ukraine will live as before and nothing will change. Believe me, in Ukraine right now, besides the Putin threat and what Putin is doing militarily, there is a big split within society, and that's a major danger.
All right, Dennis, what should we do in this situation? Today, the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, what should he do in this situation? What would be the right decision for him? That's the question.
Secure the best terms from Trump, sign the deal, and hold elections in Ukraine within 100 days. I think both parliamentary and presidential elections should occur. He shouldn't run for office. He should step away into obscurity.
That's it.
That's the most he can do for Ukraine right now.
And what is his popularity as president in Ukraine today?
Well, extremely low, extremely low. That is, he is supported by people who absolutely can't think for themselves, who, I repeat, make money from the war, and those who have fallen under the influence of propaganda. But that's the same first category, those who don't think for themselves. I think his support today is around 10-15%, no more, really.
And when you talked about these three categories, neutrality, freedom of religion, and the Russian language, could you explain what that means? Denis?
Well, we had it declared. In general, Ukraine has always been a neutral state. Before Zelensky, President Petro Oleksievich Poroshenko amended the constitution 3 months before losing the election to Zelensky. The path to NATO. Why is that? He still lost in the end, but the path to NATO remained. We kept hearing about NATO and the path to it. But the path to NATO also means reforms inside the country and reforms in the army. None of that was happening, but for some reason it was being declared. I've always supported NATO, but during the war I looked at it from the outside and understood more clearly. Ukraine should be a neutral country like Austria. Armed neutrality with cooperation with NATO, but not NATO membership. And this is the question that must be resolved definitively and no longer discussed in society. These swings, these hopes for acceptance, the United States was clear message. Ukraine will not join NATO. I think Germany, I think Spain, 5 to 7 countries, Belgium, Ukraine will not be in NATO. I want to join, but they won't take us. I'll be the first to shout. I shouted, take us into NATO, but they won't take us. We were refused. I'm a realist. We need to face Ukraine's realities ahead. I speak Russian fluently. I always studied in Ukrainian. In my family, we speak different languages. And that's why we should recognize that historically, half of Ukraine's population spoke Russian. These people hate Putin and support Ukraine. They are not separatists or different. So this is the point that politicians in our country manipulate. In Israel, Arabic used to be a state language. Now it's official, but we all know that documents and signs are all in Arabic. That issue was never politicized there. Otherwise, it would have caused a social explosion. They know not to touch it, not to open Pandora's box. In Ukraine, they opened it for political ratings. And third, freedom of religion. I don't get involved with any church at all, but I clearly understand and admire the American Constitution, which clearly states freedom of religion. They should all be allowed in Ukraine. Call it the Moscow Patriarchate if you want. But if there are KGB agents in it, wearing uniforms, working as an agent network, they need to be exposed, taken to court, put in prison, or whatever is appropriate. I don't know. But we have Russian agents in the Verkhovna Rada and in the special services too. That doesn't mean the Verkhovna Rada or the special services get shut down, right? There are a lot of agents in the Verkhovna Rada. They can.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you, Dennis. Yes, well, regarding the corruption scandal, yes, it's clear that the peace plan and the corruption scandal, many people somehow connect these things. Immediately, some conspiracy theories arise. Yes, that literally the corruption scandal happened, and almost the very next day, this very peace plan appears. And also quite tough demands towards Ukraine. Well, undoubtedly, the fact that we see these National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine investigations, yes, of course, are truly shocking. And many people are reconsidering their attitude toward the president of Ukraine. But again, the president, yes, is not the country, because the president might be bad, but people live in Ukraine. That's why, in this case, many people say that the main candidates for the position of president are, again, the military. Yes, and that means the continuation of the war. Let's say hypothetically that until the 27th, when Trump set the deadline, November 27th, Thanksgiving in America, this peace plan is signed on that same day. That's 100 days. To be re-elected, the president, they have to choose a new president. Who do you see for the position? Or let's say, in your opinion, what kind of person should it be? The ideal candidate for president of Ukraine today?
Well, ideally, it would be a libertarian who guarantees maximum freedoms and focuses on reforms with an economic emphasis as well as judicial reform. The main point is maximum freedom and opportunity for citizens.
And he already exists.
He's not in those lists, the ones from polls and sociology. He's not there. I respect the military, but I'm strongly against it holding power, especially as I see the country becoming more militarized now. Military hardliners, military hardliners. A military force with private military companies, PMCs. In other words, a contract army. The military should focus on their duties, and now they have unique combat experience unmatched worldwide. This is super professionals. They should do their job professionally. That's my vision.
That's it. That's my vision.
Yeah, well, here I am. If I continue on this topic again, the elections in Ukraine. But we do understand that most likely in this particular situation, Ukrainians will vote for the military? Yes, which could lead to renewed conflict. That is, I don't remember who recently said that any frozen conflict eventually gets unfrozen. So in this situation, assuming this most peaceful plan, yes, it's basically, let's say, freezing the conflict, because territory, the same Donbass, Luhansk region, the same Crimea, they hang in the air. That is, they may be recognized, so to speak. The United States may recognize them, but most likely, at least in the foreseeable future, that's not going to happen. For the Europeans to do that. So, in other words, the issue of territories will have to be resolved again in some way at some point. In 20, 40, 50 years, or maybe even a year, who knows? Any freeze as a result of this conflict, specifically a territorial one, because in my opinion, in this particular situation, the main issue is still the territories for Ukraine. That's it. And accordingly, all of this could, well, so to speak, happen again. And then there's something else I wanted to ask you, the most important thing. Yes. What do you think about this after all? You talk about Ukraine's neutral status, but do you think this will help Ukraine, let's say, not to be Putin's fodder, so to speak? So are you sure that Putin attacked Ukraine precisely because Ukraine stopped maintaining this neutral status? Or were there completely different men involved?
No, Putin attacked not because of that. He attacked for many reasons, many of which only he understands. You heard him those history lessons, but I'm sure that, how should I put it to you? Reducing the level of aggression, taking everyone's interest into account. That's what leads to the absence of war, to preventing a new war. That is, we have to accept Russia as it is. It's our neighbor. For example, Canada won't be there instead of Russia. We must consider everyone's interests. Neutrality means doing this. But in reality, including Ukraine's interests as well. If Ukraine is pumped up with militarism, that will definitely lead to war. I completely disagree with you that people will vote for a military man. For example, I don't see that at all in people's attitudes. They've had enough of war, so they actually don't want a military leader. Next, regarding the issue of territory, I already told you about that as well.
Who, Denny? Just tell me the last name. Who will people vote for today?
I won't tell you the last name right now, because there are no elections, no pre-election process. There will be new faces. There will be many new faces. About the freeze, that's what I'm getting at. If the points I mentioned are not key and clearly stated, that's a frozen conflict. And I'm against a freeze. In other words, it's an abscess. It needs to be resolved. You don't need to put a band-aid on it and hope it will somehow heal on its own. It won't. Let's sit down and resolve this now. We view Crimea and Donbas as our territories and believe we'll reclaim them eventually. I'm not against it, but there are realities that we need to sit down and accept. I'm not saying Ukraine should recognize Donbas or Crimea as Russian. We need to decide internally, and we won't get them back by force. Point A is diplomatic, as they say. Some say diplomatic. Let them explain how to do it. But this is...
A freeze, Dennis?
Well, why a freeze?
There's the example of the two Koreas. That's not really a freeze de facto. Well, essentially, it's the same kind of freeze. It's just in this long phase, basically not being thawed. But even North Korea, so to speak, is dreaming of appointing something there. All these ballistic missile launches are kind of a demonstration, a show of their strength and capabilities.
No, I don't see a better option. Another option is to fight to the end, but then Ukraine will be defeated militarily. So this idea that someone started that Russia can be defeated militarily, well, in my opinion, it's just, how should I put it? It simply doesn't make any sense. There are 140 million people. It's a military country with a dictator in power, run by the Federal Security Service and KGB, and has the world's largest nuclear stockpiles. What are we even seriously talking about?
Putin even...
He didn't declare general mobilization, just bought manpower for the front. And look at what's happening today. I mean, well, I'm just standing up for common sense here. No, I created this situation. I wasn't the one who gave up those territories. You know, most of the territories we lost were actually surrendered by traitors in the first days of the war.
Yes, of course.
Well, that's not a question for me. That's a friend of Zelensky who led Ukraine's security service at the war's start. That wasn't me. So let them come out and tell their story. Today, as you saw, Czech media reported a corruption scandal. Ukraine bought drones from a Czech company which purchased them from China for 20 times less. That's pure corruption. They sold each for $20,000 to Ukraine despite costing only $1,000. This wasn't due to incompetence at the Ministry of Defense. It's corruption. So, can such people really lead to anything good, to any achievements? What are we even talking about? Forget about Crimea, forget about Donbas. We need to preserve the country, what we have, and just live.
Dennis, so how do you then explain the existence of National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine? Because, let's be honest, it's impossible to imagine something like National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine in Russia. And honestly, with the level of corruption that exists in Ukraine today, let's say at the level of the president of Ukraine, yes. And yet, National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine really does, let's say, have real power. That's honest. Personally, for example, this amazes and surprises me, in a good way, of course, because it really is a very important institution that truly shows Ukraine has a future in this regard and that it can be fought for. In Russia, it's impossible to imagine that some investigations would be published somewhere, let's say about Kovalchuk, for example, someone from Putin's inner circle. But that's impossible. In Ukraine, this exists. Doesn't this give hope that sooner or later corruption can really be eradicated? Because it feels like it's already somewhere in the mind. It's taken root somewhere, and it's kind of growing along with people. This corruption, which really, it would seem, is so deeply ingrained already. But still, I think this gives us hope. No, what do you think?
No, I don't see things that simply, let me explain.
The whole background.
On corruption, as someone deeply involved, I already said, there are 3,500 state enterprises and millions of officials. In this country, corruption is inevitable and unbeatable. We shouldn't oppose it. Petrov, Ivanov, Sidorov are bad officials, but now we're going to put an honest one in their place. Yes, a person with billion-dollar corporations under state status can't be honest. Every government takes power and officials just rent them out. Look at Energoatom's latest scandal, Medici. They all profited from it. They're called strategic enterprises, so those should be privatized first since they need quality management most. And now we see that, and Kremlin agents have surely infiltrated there. That's why corruption, the causes are addressed by draining the swamp of mosquitoes, not by fighting the mosquitoes themselves. Now regarding National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine, globalists who took over Ukraine in 2014 created this organization. Despite large budgets and FBI cooperation, it has been ineffective for years. But it was a kind of counterbalance because the globalists understood that even though they were putting their own appointees here, these people were still lawless and they needed to be controlled somehow. And National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine only became active when the globalists made the decision, which happened in the summer of this year. We can't work with Zelensky. He's lost his mind. This is an element of political pressure. Yes.
Today,
I support National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine. This is the last one. And I also supported them in the summer. They're a real counterbalance to the authorities. So closing National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine today means Zelensky and Yermak are usurping power 100% today. I am speaking out for them. But worldwide, this doesn't solve the problems.
This isn't the kind of institution that from across the ocean truly appears as it is to us.
A real counterbalance. Yes, I encounter this all the time. People who don't live in Ukraine or look at it from the outside or judged by the press, they don't know. All these inside things, so to speak.
Well, yes, of course. That's
an invincible story in this way.
Dennis, I have a lot of questions for you now while you were talking to Dennis. Regarding the corruption scandal, Mindich and his departure to Israel, did this situation have an impact on the attitude of Ukrainian society towards Israel? Regarding the Jewish question, because it's clear why and how likely it is that Israel, if there is such a request from Ukraine, will extradite Mindich or not.
Israel definitely will not extradite Mindig, just like it won't extradite any of its other citizens. Yes, a wave of anti-Semitism is already spreading, so to speak. We see all sorts of images on social media, unpleasant ones about this and so on and so forth. That was the risk that Zelensky took upon himself, which he apparently didn't think about at all. What I like about this story is something else. When, let's say, other Jews who are now in opposition to Zelensky also stir up this issue, even though they themselves are Jews. For example, Dubinsky, who is currently in a detention center and is Jewish, writes anti-Semitic posts. This story is clearly unhealthy. So the question is, we had people in Vyshevankas, Ukrainian-speaking traitors of the country, and corrupt officials. It doesn't matter at all. There are idiots in every nation, but it's hard to explain that to our people. Well, I wouldn't say that Ukraine is an outright anti-Semitic country, but it is definitely being fueled.
It's being fueled. And here's a question for you. Ask Dennis, actually. Is Zelensky Ukrainian or Jewish? I'm not sure why that's a question, but it is.
You know, an Orthodox rabbi will give you his own definition, someone else will have theirs, and the person who feels something themselves will have their own. Let Zelensky answer that himself.
I don't
judge by nationality, so I won't answer.
what speaks louder about the state of Ukrainian authorities? The exposed locations or the latest corruption scandal? Continued.
Corruption scandal? These are not just the president's friends. These are his closest business partners, and he can't possibly not know about all of this. And National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine hinted that there are recordings. You know, actually, today there was information in the press that Yermak gathered the security officials and ordered them to attack National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine. So, to persecute National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine detectives, to persecute National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine leaders. Can you imagine the scale of this? They also mentioned a deputy named Arakamia. Yermak told Security Service of Ukraine Chief Maliuk to serve a notice of suspicion to Arakamia, but Maliuk refused. Smart move. The Americans likely already told him not to do it. Imagine, they're talking about the person who now leads Ukraine's negotiation group with the United States and Russia. They're saying, National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine may also suspect Umerov, who's in the negotiation group and heads the Security Service of Ukraine. If I were watching this from the outside, I'd think it's madness. But this is the reality of Ukraine today, and I'm speaking out against it.
Well, yes. Why? For the Ukrainian elite, negotiations are a threat, and for the Ukrainian... Is this a chance for life for Ukrainians?
Yes, negotiations are a chance for life. Authorities see it as a threat, but I must say, unfortunately, almost none of those who left want to return to Ukraine. They simply don't believe. Many in Ukraine today say they'll leave as soon as borders open. I find this very unpleasant. But do you know what these people did? They confused the state with the country because Ukraine is a wonderful country. And this negativity that they have towards Zelensky, we kind of projected it onto Ukraine.
Subtitles. Well, look, the same Hennady Balashov has always, for as long as I can remember, I talked to Hennady and I said, when he was already in a bad mood, very upset. And when I spoke, and I know, Dennis, you talked to him too, I said, Hennady, just wait, everything will work out. And so you can live in Canada or in the United States. He said, never. I want to live only in Ukraine, only in Ukraine. He told me this 1,000 times. That is, there are people who want to live only in Ukraine.
Well, maybe we're a little bit crazy. And the late Hennady, we always discussed this with him. Yes, we wanted to return to Ukraine, and we constantly talked about it and tried to set some deadlines for ourselves. That's true, that's true.
A question for you. Ask Dennis, in his opinion, who in the Ukrainian government is blocking the negotiations today, Zelensky or Yermak?
Today, no one is blocking it anymore because there is strong pressure from the United States. They are the ones blocking it. Alexander, it's a complicated question right now. I was reading the news before our broadcast. The head of the Ukrainian parliament says the war will only end when Ukraine gets Crimea back. How do you get Crimea back? I want to ask him. And how am I supposed to answer the question after that? I mean, they keep playing this game in public. Like, no compromise, everything without compromise, even though they know that at that very moment, negotiations about a compromise are taking place. I don't know why they're doing this.
But if we take today, I mean, not only Ukrainian society, but also those people who live outside of Ukraine, people like you and Hennady, only Ukraine. There are also those who are only not Ukraine, and they will have their own arguments for that. Most of the people I know say how much they want the war to end. But now you're saying that only if we get Crimea back. But even politicians already understand that this is practically impossible. That means the war will never end. Or maybe they just don't want it to end, knowing the Crimea issue is probably partly resolved.
Editor, yes, well, you see, specifically for Zelensky's government, this means a choice and a loss of power. Who wants to lose power? So, of course not. Meanwhile, the opposition led by Poroshenko is also closely tied to globalists in Europe. Poroshenko knows that despite having a parliamentary faction now, he wouldn't win a seat if elections were held tomorrow. They're clinging to power desperately, which makes this situation so terrible. I've always supported holding elections even in wartime, and modern technology enables this. Today's political crisis in Ukraine exists only because parliamentary and presidential elections weren't held.
Here's a question for you. I understand you're from Ukraine. Why does almost all of Zelensky's inner circle, according to Twitter, spend more time in Europe than in Ukraine? From your point of view, Denis, is this more like betrayal or a panicked escape?
People can't calculate the time because this feature has only been out for 3 days. They don't know. Believe me, this circle feels comfortable even in Ukraine. They are in a privileged position. Where they are, rockets and drones aren't flying. They have every opportunity to make enormous money. That's why I think Ukraine is a gold mine for them. They feel comfortable there.
The question is, well, these questions are different, right, Denis? I'm choosing the ones that are more delicate.
Any of them, you can read the unpleasant ones too, including those.
You claim, Denis, that Zelensky's regime is collapsing from within. What facts support this?
Corruption scandals confirm it. Also, 2/3 of Zelensky's deputies demanded he fire Yermak during an attempted coup against Zelensky. That's a real mutiny on the ship. Everything is now out in the open, and Zelensky had to address it recently. It's like a house of cards collapsing. It couldn't end differently. It's a completely rotten, corrupt group. Let's call them that. People.
Dennis, how do you see Yermak's role in this? Because, well, this so-called gray eminence in the Ukrainian government is mentioned very often. How would you describe that?
Yes, this is the person Zelensky fully trusts with all of Ukraine's internal affairs. That is, Zelensky said that he is focusing on communicating with partners. Getting money and weapons is like diplomacy, with Yermak at the top of Ukraine's corrupt pyramid. People outside Ukraine may not realize the scale of money involved. It's tens of billions of dollars. That's when everything is under your control. Major entrepreneurs will tell you he decides everything, what businesses can and can't operate during the war. For example, the bookmaking business, betting. It's a huge business worth billions. There was a redistribution of the market. They either took over all major sectors or let them operate to benefit themselves. I mean, unbelievable things are happening. Besides, don't forget about the huge amounts of money that Europe and America allocated. They have it there. For example, Zelensky gave his godmother $1 million and a yearly show funded by the state budget. She used this money to create a show that hardly anyone watches, only about 50 views. So you understand this is, well, purely a Soviet country, Yes, Yermak leads all this. I no longer see him as a gray cardinal. Everything is already clear. And, well, it just needs to be officially presented. But I don't rule out that, well, Yermak won't get away with it, but Zelensky might easily get away with it.
But here's something interesting. It might sound pretty naive, of course, but still. So what do you think, Zelensky? Well, basically, when he became president, and even before that, was he, let's say, a wealthy man? Well, I understand, yes. So new opportunities, new financial flows. But at some point, you need to not exactly stop. But really, doesn't he see that the front is collapsing, that people don't want to fight, that there is a catastrophic shortage of this and that? As for energy, I'm not even talking about that. It's a crime against people. That's it. But nevertheless, yes. So these people, let's say we assume, continue to steal in, let's say, truly enormous amounts. When will it stop? Is there no limit? What do you think?
Never. Imagine a gambler in a casino who has unlimited chips. He'll never get out. It's always the same story. The brain adapts. These are people who see and understand life in a completely different way. I've talked to them a few times. I saw it. They are completely different people, biologically.
Uh-huh.
Thank you.
Dennis, why do you think corruption cases get shut down so quickly?
I've heard they've unofficially paused for now, but I'm not sure if that's true. National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine promised not to publish anything for 2 weeks, claiming important negotiations are happening and they don't want to cause issues domestically. By the way, I totally disagree. That's why nothing like that has come up today. Let's wait and see. Trump moved the deadline from Thanksgiving to next Monday, and apparently Zelensky is supposed to come to America next week. So maybe something will happen after that, or maybe not. By the way, this once again proves that this pressure from National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine is purely a political tool.
What became the point of no return for Zelensky's regime? Continuation.
Yes, to be honest, the point of no return was the dictatorship they built. I can say that I felt it before anyone else and openly called him a dictator back in the summer of 2022, which is why I had to leave. But people let something terrible happen. You understand these actions of the TCC. In general, the war itself became the point of no return, let me tell you. The continuation of the war became the point of no return. The continuation.
I don't know.
Not me, because you are already me. I had. He realized he had returned and simply confirmed it. Yeah.
He's in the detention center.
I just asked Gennady Viktorovich about this question, and he said that it's exactly the same story. That, so to speak, it's like Putin and Berezovsky. So, Putin devoured Berezovsky, just like Zelensky is devouring Kolomoisky. Do you think that's the case? 100.
Absolutely. It's a perfect analogy. And I think the same philosophy was at the forefront, the same as Putin's and the same as Zelensky's.
Why, Dennis? Why is he eating him?
All of Zelensky's actions show that honestly. Even Russian politicians say that he performed at their corporate parties. Something inside him was stirred. I once danced for you, but now I'll show everyone. Let the movies entice you. He began doing it, a typical trait of petty people.
Aha, how strong are anti-American sentiments in Ukrainian society today? You can hear slogans like Americans out of Ukraine. You made fools out of us. And that is, Americans are to blame for everything. Does such an ideology exist in Ukraine, or is it made up?
No, there is no Americans out of Ukraine here. But gradually, what Russian propaganda has done is spreading. The idea that Americans are to blame for everything, that they are the bad ones. Do you see this mentality? It's communist. We need something, you have it, so you owe us.
You owe us everything.
You have to do everything for us and give us everything, because that's just how we are in this situation. No one is discussing why we're here or how to fix it. They just yell about the war and push forward. You ask the question, at whose expense? Should America give it? They won't. Should Europe give it? Well, how can you seriously talk about anything with these people?
Well, you're absolutely right. Well, I read today that for some reason there is a special hatred in Ukrainian society towards Tivu Vitov. And what did Vitov do in Ukraine that was so bad that people dislike him so much today?
They believe that Vitov completely submitted to the Russians and is setting terms that are entirely unfavorable for Ukraine. People who've never built anything, not even a doghouse, I've seen it, they just call him some realtor.
Well,
go try becoming a billionaire in Manhattan. In short, that's exactly what disgusts me.
Dennis, I'm interested in your opinion. What do you think? So let's say years and decades will pass, and of course, no one in Ukraine will forget this war, and most importantly, its consequences. Especially me here. I probably agree with you that a huge number of Ukrainians most likely will not return to Ukraine. Even, let's say, if a peace agreement is signed there, it doesn't matter, yes, even if, let's say, a peaceful peace is achieved. Well, what do you think about this generation that will be born, that will build a new Ukraine? Who will they blame for all this? Zelensky's team, the president of Ukraine himself, or still the president of Russia, Putin, and the Russians? Because I'll explain why I'm asking. Because I get the impression that today there are a lot of Ukrainians who blame the president of Ukraine for everything. He's to blame for everything. The war started because he ran for office, broke promises, and it's his fault. He's to blame for the fact that there were supposed to be negotiations, let's say, in Istanbul, but he didn't do it, and it should have been done, and so on and so on. So basically, Zelensky gets all the blame, but no mention of who started it. Excuse me, we have a phone call, Dennis. So if you don't mind, let's take it now.
My question.
We'll answer my question later, and now let's listen to our call. Yes, good morning. You're on the air. Hello, what's your name? Good morning.
The call was disconnected.
Yes, that's why
That's why
nothing is stopping us.
I just want to say our phone number is 7787-16067. If you want to ask Dennis, our guest, a question, you need to do it now, not when there are only 3 minutes left and Dennis doesn't have any time. We can't voice your question or give you the opportunity, so please do it in advance. I'm sorry, Dennis. Yes, I'm listening, Dennis.
Putin is an aggressor. That's not even up for discussion. Could the war have been avoided? Yes. Could he have been stopped sooner? Yes, that's why people rightly blame Zelensky. I'll tell you about myself. I was in Kiev when the war began. And then I hear that first powerful explosion at 5 in the morning, I think it was. My first thought wasn't that Putin is a scoundrel, even though that's what I always called him before. Instead, I cursed our own government.
Why?
Because I know the situation deeply and I saw how it all worked. No one is claiming Putin is a great guy or praising him. I'm also a victim of Putin, but you have to look at the bigger picture. Could this have been avoided? Yes. Was anything done to prevent this? No. I have the same complaints about Biden, who had a nice talk with Putin in Geneva. Then the war started. They kept saying it was fine if Ukraine fell in 3 days or if Putin attacked.
Tell me, please, you just said, could this have been prevented? You said yes. Was anything done to make that happen? No. And what should have been done? What could have been done?
The questions we're discussing today, 3 key ones: neutrality, language, and religion. At least these, plus territorial ones my test mentions. Back then, there wasn't such a stalemate. I spoke out with a proposal for Zelensky. I was literally giving him advice at that time, just like I did about Trump, giving advice when he supported Kamala. Go to Trump with your proposal. Put the KGB in a dead end. DHUYP. My solution is that Ukraine should adopt a federal system. Shameful by radio, some Americans cross the municipality, but staying part of Ukraine is still shameful. They will have their own governor. They want someone with their own mentality, their Donbas mentality, no problem. But this is Ukraine. Different people live in Ukraine. We have to accept that. But this is Ukraine. That's all.
We have a call. Let's listen. Good morning. You're on the air. Hello, what's your name?
Hello, good morning to everyone. Good morning.
Good morning.
I have a question. I want to,
Please, yes.
Please, we're listening.
Denny, so look what happened. No matter what government comes to power there in Ukraine, no matter what slogans they have, it's always the same: corruption and theft. Or maybe do what happened 1,000 years ago or even more. When the Slavs invited the Varangians, Rurik and his brothers, to rule over them, it was the same thing. So invite the Scandinavians, the Varangians, now. Or like after the Ragnar movie, as I call them. They've already forgotten. They don't even use that word anymore in everyday life.
To steal?
They don't even have it in their mentality to steal. And all their appointments as deputies, parliament members, mayors, and so on. And most importantly, where do the financial flows go? Maybe then the theft will stop.
I see, thank you.
What big?
Theft happens only in Ukraine. I don't really understand this question.
By the way, I've also heard about this happening in Russia for a long time, right?
Yes, Dennis, what do you think?
Well, I understand people want simple solutions. There were Varangians in Ukraine. When Maidan happened, the globalists brought people here. There was a guy named Aslan, by the way, a Scandinavian, and they brought a bunch of managers. And what was the result in the end? Nothing, man. Today I spoke specifically to convey the essence of the issue to people. 3,500 state-owned enterprises and millions of officials, anyone, even a Norwegian or Swede, could be placed there.
You want? It will be...
Corruption exists because the system encourages it. State property belongs to no one. Only privatization can solve this, eliminating the need for other solutions. The British claim there's no anti-Semitism in Britain because they don't see themselves as less intelligent than Jews. Someone talks about a certain mentality, but it doesn't really exist. Continuation, proper laws shape the right mentality. Singapore, for example, turned a swamp into a thriving country. That's why these are simple solutions. Focus on the root cause, not the effect. People focus on the effect.
A question for you from Israel. Dennis, more than 1% of Russian-speaking Jews, Israelis, have supported Ukraine since the very beginning of the war. But the situation was such that Zelensky reached out to Israel for help more than once. At the same time, these votes at the United Nations against Israel, the recognition of the Palestinian state, what does all this mean from your point of view? I think you know the answer.
Of course, I know the answer. This is Zelensky's cooperation and pressure on Zelensky, the globalist. Who was spreading the anti-Israel agenda? The globalists. During the time when the war was happening, after October 7, the vote in the United Nations was a complete disgrace to me. And by the way, Israel helped, but people don't know. Israel keeps some things private due to its relationship with Russia, which is understandable. People overlook things and once again find someone to blame. I don't mean the person asking, I mean in general. Israel is at fault for not giving something to Ukraine and should act differently. I view Israel as an ally to Ukraine, similar to the United States. There are things to trade, including defense-related things, some things to do together, considering the situation is somewhat similar. They support every anti-Israel resolution at the United Nations. I don't get it, unless it's just because they're globalists. Zelensky is definitely not an anti-Semite.
Well, yes, you mean his attitude towards Judaism, so he's not an anti-Semite. Am I saying it right?
Yes.
Dennis, some say that the biggest anti-Semites are sometimes Jews themselves, though it's rare. But look, in terms of that, so to speak, I really am a Russian-speaking Jew in Israel. Very many. I talk to them. They have supported Ukraine from the very first day of the war, both emotionally and actively. And what happened next, to be honest with you, pushed many people away. They said, how is this possible? This can't be. Things don't happen like this. Don't ask us for anything. And if you're asking, why aren't you supporting our country? Well, it's kind of, what do you call it? Double standards. But didn't Zelensky understand this? And doesn't he understand it now? Thank you.
He found himself in a difficult situation. This is a topic for a long discussion. As you said, Zelensky entered with different promises to end the war, being a Russian speaker, and that none of this would happen. He was re-recruited at some point. Thank you. He was harshly attacked by globalists who were forming nationalist organizations in Ukraine. You can find videos and photos. They described the presidential administration to him and tried to attack or storm it. Thank you. And as a result, pressure was applied, and he became a complete satellite of the globalists. And that's when it all started, all these anti-Israeli things and everything else. It's big politics, complicated.
I said today that Ukrainians, like any people, are different. And then someone wrote to you the following, Ukraine, well, I'm just reading it as it's written. Ukraine has split into 3 types: Westerners, Kyiv region, Donbass. Are these 3 different countries?
No, I absolutely reject such statements. I say and I admit there are different people living in Ukraine, different people, but they are all Ukrainians. And those people from the West, those. By the way, this contributed to what happened in Donbass. And today they keep saying that there are some wrong people living in Donbass. And at the same time, they shout that Donbass absolutely must be returned. So, are you putting these people in a filtration camp? This is exactly the mistake of state governance. No Ukrainians have split anywhere. People are just different. Just like Americans are different. You go to Florida, and those are one kind of Americans. In California, they're another. Somewhere in Utah, they're a third kind. I think something like that exists in Canada too.
Well, here someone wrote to you that you're a cool, tough guy, no unnecessary formalities. With a neighbor like that, you always have to be on your toes. Do you agree with that point of view? I know this somehow Ukrainians and Palestinians, especially Palestinians, impress me. Innocent victims of aggressive aggressors, that's how it is.
That's a globalist agenda. Accounts showing both the Ukrainian and Palestinian flags are just schizophrenic. Well, of course not. Of course not. It's completely different things. Ukraine hasn't attacked anyone.
Yeah. You heard on your stream about Yatsenyuk. What do you think about this guy who keeps saying that he'll take down Putin and Russia?
Yeah, he's become more active. He disappeared for a while after he stopped being prime minister, but now he's become really active again. And according to my information, he's being prepared for this National Salvation Committee, which might happen, although I don't really believe in it anymore, a return to politics. And even such a scenario is being prepared. Zaluzhny as president and Yatsenyuk as his prime minister, since we all understand that Zaluzhny doesn't know anything except military affairs, so Yatsenyuk would basically be running everything. But this man was the prime minister. That's when this meme appeared. He said he would build a wall against Russia. It's already become a meme. Where is this wall? Funds were allocated, everyone discussed it, but no reforms happened, even after Maidan. And now he appears today on Western television, mostly British. He says, only until the end. That's giving in. Every day, VEX writes, then Elon Musk steps in. We see this function in Yatsenyuk, Germany, and he has an Apple store in Germany. Everything becomes clear.
Dennis, how do you explain that then? Indeed, it feels like, so to speak, there's this concept of a lame duck, and it's the same in politics. So, for example, let's say Volodymyr Zelensky is basically a lame duck right now. His chances of re-election are extremely low, so Ukraine will likely have a new president. But we see, for example, that Petro Poroshenko, in general, I don't know how popular he is today. There's the mentioned S. Yatsenyuk, Yulia Tymoshenko. So these politicians, the old, so to speak, wave, who, so to speak, have proven that they're hardly capable of anything anymore. Well, to put it mildly, yeah, that's how it is, if we're being honest. But even now, they're still out there riding the waves with people listening and watching them. I'll say it again, I don't know how popular they are today, but I've been told they're quite popular and could very well get some votes. How can you explain this? Why is this happening?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I'm not a politician, so I can say this. It's because of human foolishness. Sadly, our people have this trait. We have to repeat the same mistakes several times before we understand. But I decided for myself that if this happens, if this political mothball gets into parliament again or gets high positions, then I will step away from this activity, admitting to myself I did everything I could. And this is a completely pointless story. That is, I am powerless here.
I have a second question, Dennis. Well, it's not my question. Ask Dennis. Be honest, Dennis, are there fascists in Ukraine?
Let me explain. Fascists exist in every country. They exist in America and Canada too, just a bunch of marginals. There are such people in both Russia and Ukraine. If people are asking about paramilitary groups that put on all sorts of badges, that's a technology introduced by globalists who gave it huge funding. Entire camps began to grow in Ukraine, filled with children and teens ages 12 to 16 from families where parents don't pay much attention to them. They were impressionable minds. They wanted to feel like someone, to have someone take charge over them. Their brains were washed. And that's where these things start to take root. There's no ideology to it. It's just something that was created as a red flag for Putin. Created. Another excuse for Putin to act badly in Ukraine. His argument is to denazify Ukraine and fight fascism and Nazism. That's Putin's claim. If these organizations didn't exist, this argument wouldn't either. Subtitles by Dima Torzak. Someone will let this happen. Remember that so-called nationalist party that joined parliament after Maidan? Welcome, Kazakhstan. Everyone was on the payroll with the regionals and Yanukovych's people. They kept creating an image for Russian television that Ukrainians from the West were supposedly roaming around and attacking Russian speakers. And back then, there was nothing like that at all.
Well, it was already about the same as it was in Russia. No.
Well,
Here's the thing. I didn't finish reading it to you. Well, Dennis, did you kind of push me to this now? About Bandera.
Traditionally, this is something you absolutely have to ask.
I didn't want to ask, but this is my 10th time.
Traditionally?
About the Banderites, if I may.
Your view on Bandera.
I won't comment on that, which is also why I support federalization. If Bandera is a hero for them in Lviv, then I don't mind. Don't push him on me in Kyiv. They already named a bridge and street after Bandera and want more. That's all I oppose. Build any monuments you want, just leave Odessa residents who prefer otherwise alone. You are Ukrainians, and the people of Odessa are Ukrainians too. But if you say that the people of Odessa aren't Ukrainians, then Putin is right there and he'll gladly take advantage of that. That's what the situation looks like. That's why I don't comment on Bandera. For me, let's just say he's far from a hero, to put it mildly.
A hint?
Did you get it? If someone is seen as a hero in Ukraine, I won't bother them.
And what is your attitude towards Dennis Trump in general, towards the American president? And what do you think about how Trump is behaving today? Many people think he's crazy. In the morning, he says one thing, in the afternoon, another, and in the evening, something else.
But I'll tell you this without false modesty. I am the #1 Trump supporter in Ukraine, and I have been supporting Trump for a long time and consistently. And being in Ukraine, I spoke out in his favor, and of course I supported him in the elections, and I suffered for it, among other things. Thanks, but I actually advised Zelensky on doing the right thing. And today I support President Trump. And if it weren't for Trump, these negotiations wouldn't be happening. The war would have continued, just dragging on like this. Europe and others won't let Ukraine lose, but also won't let them win.
Then the question arises, Dennis, how do you feel about Trump's decision not to provide assistance?
Mainly military technical aid to Ukraine, shifting the responsibility to Europe, which happened later. At first, he refused completely. How did you see and react to that?
Look, as an effective tool for ending the war,
If
Trump uses intelligence and halts aid, Ukraine's front won't collapse, and Zelensky will quickly push to end the war. We all know Trump would never have let the Ukraine front collapse. I know this perfectly well, including from things I can't talk about. This isn't even up for discussion. America has invested heavily in Ukraine due to geopolitics. Ukraine won't be abandoned. More to come. It's just that if Zelensky doesn't understand any other way, then extreme measures need to be taken. Trump knows how to make tough cuts and difficult decisions. Well, look, the globalists gave, Biden gave weapons, Biden gave money. Did that lead to peace?
In Ukraine,
The president of Ukraine must be responsible for everything.
But
After that, I don't view Boris Johnson the same.
let me explain. What, Volner? The review of Pisani was interfered with. I don't regret it. And the previous one polled.
Business slava together. You know, as an oppositionist to Zelensky, it was unpleasant for me back then. The situation, I understood that Ukraine would suffer, and I just couldn't be happy about it. Oh, that's nice. Zelensky was put down, while Trump and Pence acted appropriately. Analyzing it, Trump and Pence were right in that situation. I know what kind of person Zelensky is. The way he behaved there, it's unacceptable. And he got what he deserved for it. After that, Ukraine was cut off from intelligence data for several days, you know, and there were big problems at the front. It's unpleasant for me that Ukraine suffered because of him.
And here is one. Well, I think I won't say it's a provocation, no, but just a comment like that. In 1989, in Lviv, a group of teenagers attacked us yelling, Moskali Kliati. I fainted. That was 1989, far from 08, 14 or 22. I was also in Lviv and no one attacked me. So for me, it's kind of like, well, I'm not saying you're lying, but I was in Lviv myself. And I kind of, well, I mean, it's just made up. It's not true. Well, maybe it was earlier, probably in the 90s. No, in the 90s, I was no longer living in the Soviet Union. Anyway, it was a long time ago, but I didn't see the attackers. And
in the 2000s, no one attacked. Believe me, before this topic started to be stirred up artificially,
Thank you, Ned. Well, and most importantly, even if there were attacks, that's no reason for Russia to attack Ukraine.
Oh,
No, I'm looking at this from the perspective of internal history, internal politics. Of course, that's not a reason. And in general, in my opinion, Putin is actually Zelensky's personal matter. Because it would have been easier for Putin to take $10 billion and bribe the entire Verkhovna Rada and to get all Russia wants in Ukraine accepted politically as in Georgia. That's why they sent in tanks.
There's something more behind that. How much do you think in Ukraine, well, in Ukraine, the president should be Ukrainian, and that's not up for discussion. Zelensky taking on this role despite being elected is an issue for Ukrainians, Jews, and Israel-Ukraine relations. What are your thoughts?
No, in Ukraine, the president should be chosen for ideas, not nationality or ethnicity. And people should vote for ideology, not just for some person. We had Kravchuk and Yushchenko, who were Ukrainian. Yanukovych doesn't appear Jewish and claims that Poroshenko is Jewish are false. The fact that they call him Waltzman, actually his father was in prison and his nickname was Waltzman. Political strategists twisted this and wrongly attributed it to him. Poroshenko isn't Jewish. So what? And what did they end up with? For example, Kravchuk inherited a magnificent Ukraine in 1991 with great assets, nuclear weapons, and a strong army. And
What those who shout today that Russian has no place in Ukraine, do you think that this
isn't true? I don't even ask such a question. Because how could it be when Russians are bombing Ukraine? So, will they just say, we love you, come over? Putin has done this and fixing it will take time, but not as long as people think.
people, I mean,
There won't be anything like that for 50 years.
continuation? Regarding Poland, what have you heard about what's happening today? What is Poland proposing in relation to what's happening in Ukraine? Well,
You know, Prime Minister Tusk is once again following the globalist agenda, while Naraki is behaving differently. Overall, Poland has done a lot for Ukrainians during this war. Very
much. How likely is it that Ukraine's relationship with NATO will develop, and how will it end? And who do you call globalists?
Dennis continuation. Well, globalists are people like Soros and everyone he finances. It's a huge global network that use non-governmental organizations. As we all know, this is Soros's super genius invention. In Ukraine, there were an unimaginable number of them.
They
Controlled 90% of the media, and all of this led to what we have now. So you see, at some point you come under the influence and the country just gets pumped full of aggression and hatred. But when you step aside and look at it constructively, you ask yourself, why? Will this help Ukraine? But we see that no, it didn't help. To put it mildly, I support trading with everyone, focusing on the economy, and I won't repeat everything I've already said.
Continuation. You know, it's right here. Regarding globalists, yes, since this topic often comes up, people write that you mention globalists in every sentence. Who are these globalists? What is this scare story? And what exactly is wrong with them?
So, well, it's an agenda that's been working. America is now discussing lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender issues, saying they needed, among other things, this war with Putin. Well, I mean, it's a huge agenda that was imposed depending on the region. These are illegal migrants who are all over Europe. The aim is to destabilize the situation, allowing for control. And then these people will vote for those who benefit people like Soros and others like him, when they simply get citizenship and documents. And this happened in America. It's a huge technology. And they see Ukraine as some kind of buffer. Not a country, not a successful country, just a buffer. Let them fight with Russia there.
Endlessly.
This is not a theory.
Of conspiracy. Well, yes, what is the actual population of Ukraine right now? Dennis, an expert, estimates it at 18 to 20 million.
Autoglues, no. 26 to 28 million. This was measured by mobile operators, mobile communication. It was measured by these operators as 26 to 28 million. No, 18. That's unrealistic.
More. Dennis, please tell me, today is November 24, 2025, and not the 25th, right?
Yes, the 24th.
Do please tell me, in your opinion, what are the chances? For this plan, which now has 19 points instead of 28, that Zelensky will sign this plan, and then Putin, if he signs it? And is there any light at the end of the tunnel that this war might end?
Thank you. The probability is high. Subtitle editor, the probability is high. There is progress in this matter, but I don't want to celebrate prematurely because I fully understand that everything can fall apart at the last moment. Let's just observe, but I'll tell you this, I'll put it this way, Ukraine has never been this close to peace as
it is now. But many people are talking and writing about this. About the fact that, and I think Mark Rubio also said that negotiations have never been as productive as they were, for example, in Geneva. Just now, yes, they literally just ended. But we don't see what Russia is talking about. After all, Russia is also signing this very plan. But out of 28, only 19 remain. And as I understand it, again, many experts say that this plan was almost single-handedly drafted by Mr. Dmitriev. Yes, but in fact, Vitkov, well, basically just nodded his head and delivered it to Trump. But here's the question. To what extent will Russia accept these trimmed-down points, which, as I understand, are no longer there? These agreements also seem quite important to me. What do you think?
Dennis, well, of course, but I'll tell you, Russia didn't develop this plan at all. It was done on purpose. I saw this whole campaign growing, the attempts to disrupt peace, so to speak. I believe Russia was aware of much and prioritized working on this, especially regarding Ukraine. Why? Russia is strong right now. I don't like it, but we must admit it. Compared to Ukraine, I think that Putin, as always, and the KKB will get on our nerves. But really, the world...
That's why he is absolutely sure that this plan was entirely created by Russia and simply handed over
to the Americans. Well, the thing is, this is Christo Grozev. He himself is a big technology, I'll put it that way. From the outside, he looks more like a British intelligence agent. I also think there's something about him, kind of. You know, I'll tell you a story now.
Very briefly.
There was such a scandal, if you remember.
It was called Wagnergate.
Ukrainian special services conducted a major operation against Wagner members, but they were ultimately released. And this Christo Grozev was running around, and he was saying, we're about to publish such a film.
In Minsk, I think they were detained, yes.
Yes, they called Minsk and leaked the operation.
Yes.
We'll release the film. It's truly colossal. Yermak will be exposed, the Russian agents uncovered, and Gordon was helping him. That's basically it. And then it was as if nothing had happened. And after that, Zelensky became as obedient as silk. That's quite an interesting coincidence.
It turned out that way.
So, you know, Christo Grozev, that's it.
Of course, we need to
read it to understand what's on their minds, but to take it seriously.
You know, Dennis, what I keep thinking about all the time, even before our conversation and during it, and that's what I started with. Dennis and I were just talking about how the likelihood of Ukraine ever being so close to ending the war has never been as high as it is now. And I can't stop thinking about Balashov. You know, he was someone who lived for this, who hoped for it, who did so much for it. He's gone, he passed away on the 11th. Exactly 2 weeks have passed. So many things have happened in these 2 weeks. People are now saying things that just 2 weeks ago, when Gennady Viktorovich was alive, no one would have considered. But I haven't heard any such conversations, any such discussions, or any such information. Well, of course, it's naive to say that. But if he had held on just a little longer, just one more day, one more week, he would be alive today. And what a person he was. I don't know. You know, these thoughts just won't leave me. They just won't leave me.
Me too, believe me, and my subscribers as well. People are constantly writing, it's just, well, it's a real tragedy. What else can you call it? It's a real tragedy.
Thank you.
By the way, there are similar feelings here, for example, among those who left Russia and those who disagree with the current Russian regime. And those who, well, with each passing day are losing hope of returning more and more. and you can understand them, you can explain it. Isn't the same thing happening with Ukraine? I mean, with those who left? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, 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 thank you. Thank you. Another Putin. The regime, in my opinion, will remain well, at least for the foreseeable future. So in Ukraine, will the regime change after Zelensky leaves? Will the country's development direction change or remain the same? Hypothetically, another Zelensky could come, as we've seen year after year with Poroshenko and Zelensky, but corruption remained. People lived poorly. It stayed the same.
It will stay that way unless the person after Zelensky has a different last name. You were right. There were no good presidents, but Ukraine never had a dictatorship until Zelensky. Before him, independent Ukraine never experienced dictatorship. Yanukovych was once very close to this.
Close. Why?
It ended,
But this can be explained by the war.
No, there was a war in Israel too, but not a dictatorship. Did you know the security service of Ukraine broke into my mom and grandmother's apartment? Last November, exactly a year ago, my mom made a repost. Nobody reads her. She's just an ordinary person, not a blogger or anything. She shared a link to our stream with Balashov on her Facebook page. She's simply being accused of justifying Russian aggression. You people who have talked to Balashov quite a lot. Can you believe Hennedy or I justified Russian aggression, or that my mother could? She's the one under Putin's rockets. We helped people together in the early days of the war, those who suffered. This is what the Zelensky regime has done. A criminal case was opened against him, and she was under house arrest right after that. For example, he had a trial in November, and there will be another one in December. And do you know who her prosecutor is? The same prosecutor who is prosecuting Nabushnik Magomed Rasulov. Maybe you've heard about this high-profile case. It all looks very much like just one big group carrying out private orders for Zelensky and Yermak. The war was just an excuse that day to force Balashova and me out of the country. Or maybe we could have somehow served Ukraine and helped. With creativity. You see, that's what I spoke about and talked about a lot. War is clear and Putin is the aggressor, but that's no excuse to act against your own people in Ukraine. To Zelensky, I never said Putin is good. From who? Putin? We were all expecting a knife in the back, but when it's your own government that drives it in, especially at a moment like this, it's even worse. And especially since my whole family and I voted for Zelensky and against Poroshenko. My friends and I, foolishly, when Zelensky won the election, we opened champagne. I remember it like it was yesterday.
I remember. By the way, how much did that television series Servant of the People influence your decision?
Servant of the people? 0%. I didn't believe in anything. Zelensky didn't have a program. Secondly, they kept him from giving interviews. He gave just one interview in the whole campaign to Gordon, to no one else. And to Ukrainska Pravda 30 minutes about nothing because he couldn't say anything. I voted against Poroshenko because I understood back then. These torchlight processions, all this military hype, hatred, the army, the language, faith, slogan, Poroshenko's motto, I understood perfectly well how all this would end. Plus, this whole corrupt story, the corruption, it was the same under Poroshenko. And people, not just me, you understand, 73% weren't for Zelensky. Out of them, 70% were against Poroshenko. Continuation. That's how things really are.
Not for what, what is this, what I am not, what is what? I couldn't understand. This is for...
What? I couldn't understand what this is. I couldn't understand what this, what is this what? Can't understand what, this is what I understand about what is this? What? I never could have imagined that this person has a dictatorship in his head. I didn't expect reforms or that the Russian language would be oppressed and this hatred fueled. I expected him to be like Yushchenko and not interfere with the economy or small and medium businesses. Freedom of speech in general. I mean, how could someone who built his whole career on political satire possibly touch freedom of speech? He made his whole living and all his money by mocking politicians. So much so that compared to him and his team, I'm like a pioneer. And no one ever touched him, but he went after my parents. Can you even imagine what goes on in the mind of someone who would do that?
Parents? No, really, as they say, there's no sadder story.
in the world. Tell me, please, when this tragedy happened with Balashov, who essentially was pushed out of Ukraine just like you were, and his wish to live and return only home, as he said. Gennady, when he was already gone, and this happened on our channel. On air, Honcharenko said that it was after a serious illness. That was really strange for me. Where did he even get that from? That was a few days ago. And Gordon and Portnikov started spreading it everywhere, saying Balashov is gone. Subtitles by Dima Tozok. Why bother?
Prodon, well, Gennady once said something there. There used to be a press attaché for Zelensky, press secretary Yulia Mendel. She's also in America now, as far as I know. And Balashov said that she was pregnant by Zelensky. And after that, Balashov started having big problems. I told Gennady about this.
I told him.
But is it right to punish a person like that just for words? That's not right either. Is it right? That's what Gennady said. That's not right either. But then he started having problems. You see, that's how the story goes. And that's why they don't let him go after death. Their goal is to crush him. And after that, what else did I see? The head of the Balashov party posted a video saying that they appealed to the authorities to put up a plaque on Gennady's office, like Gennady Balashov lived and worked here. Well, something like that.
Is that how it's done?
They didn't just refuse. They said this cafe that Gennady built is to be demolished, and this little park too. He landscaped a small area across from the Ukrainian parliament, but it's set to be demolished after a person dies, what he created. This shows that the resentment is, first of all, petty, and secondly, there's a very deep resentment toward Balashov. And Portikov and Gordon are propagandists who say what they're told to say. Their job is to throw some topic into society. Special services monitor public reaction and push through their agenda. The thesis, though privileged.
Position. And then right now, as we're talking, people started writing to me and Denis Vanzarov saying that we've changed our minds. Yeah, well, you saw that, right, Denis? Probably. What?
No, about changing our minds, I didn't
See it. The point is that at first you supported Ukraine, kind of
wrote about it and still support it.
support it. No. Well, what Denis is saying today and what Gennady Balashov was talking about, I don't know. It's not support for Ukraine, but rather criticism of the Ukrainian government. It's criticism, so to speak. I criticize, speaking for myself.
To speak, no. I admit that what happened with Zelensky was honestly a very unpleasant discovery for me. I'll be honest, I didn't expect that. And for me, honestly, it really makes me think, let's put it that way, in terms of what's actually happening. Although I did suspect it, of course, but naturally I never denied it. But like this, during the war, the energy sector, well, honestly, for me, it was a very unpleasant discovery. But overall, I didn't reconsider anything at all. I mean, I think that, yes, that's how it is. Yes, that's the kind of president we have, so to speak. But that in no way cancels out what's happening in Russia today, what's going on in Ukraine. That's it.
That's all, of course. So I completely support you. That's the problem of the person who wrote this. That's the problem I'm fighting with all my strength. Ukraine isn't Zelensky and Zelensky isn't Ukraine.
Ukraine, I'm with you.
I agree. Someone who thinks that way is like a Russian. No Vladimir Vladimirovich, no Russia. If you're against Vladimir Vladimirovich, just leave. Anyone but a Russian.
Against Russia, of course. And again, going back to Gennady Viktorovich Balashov, there's this criticism from the likes of Gordon and Portnikov. They called him nothing but a pro-Russian propagandist. That's a fact. Not supporting Ukrainian authorities automatically labels a person as pro-Russian. If we, for example, hypothetically say that, yes, this corruption scandal, well, let's put it mildly, doesn't exactly make Volodymyr Zelensky look good, then it means we've changed sides. It means we're somehow taking the side of Russia and Putin's regime. That doesn't mean anything at all. Absolutely. I still consider this regime criminal, just as I did before.
I still do. Denis, do you remember early war talks about Volodymyr Zelensky being a hero, that he
didn't leave? Yes, that's what I...
Remember, he left the country. Denis, I wanted to ask about when he said, I don't need a taxi, but now I can't recall exactly what it was.
A taxi. He needs a weapon, Denis, not a taxi. He needs a weapon. He said, I took this story very calmly, if that's your question. Because you know what he witnessed in Kyiv on February 24. We didn't know if we would even survive. There was such panic in the city. It was just unbelievable. And when Zelensky comes out, who is under the protection of special forces, the entire government district is blocked off. By the way, that's where Gennady Pokoyny had his office under super protection, under the cover of America and Britain. And he says that he's a big hero, that he didn't leave, that he fulfilled his direct duty. Sorry, that doesn't work on me. I didn't leave either. My friends didn't leave. A bunch of Ukrainian men not only didn't leave, they went to the front lines and gave their lives. The real heroes here are the people, not Zelensky. That's what political technology is about. And besides that, he has things to brag about.
There was life before the war. Zelensky has been president since 2019, and the war began in 2022. Honestly, Dennis, I admit that, to be honest, I have always admired how Zelensky, no matter what, spits his way, smirks. Ha ha ha, see, he went to America again to ask for money. Ha ha, he's performing somewhere again asking for money. Honestly, that's how it is. I understood why Zelensky did this, at least from my perspective. I understood that. Yes, I understood that the person nevertheless is looking for money to, well, basically help his country, help the army, help the people, and so on. Because it's clear that without money, Ukraine won't survive. Without help, Ukraine won't survive at all, right? So it's obvious comparing big, powerful Russia, right, with its potential and Ukraine, right? Well, probably that's at least not quite correct, not quite right. So for me, it wasn't exactly admiration. Yes, but honestly, I saw all of this from a different perspective. Still, I wondered if I could do the same under those smirks. When everyone is laughing at you, but you keep sticking to your path, you keep going, begging, asking, and so on and so on. Well, that's how I looked at it.
I can only agree with you about the first 3 months of the war. I started my YouTube channel during the war when television was off. I knew what would happen if I turned it on now. If you go back to the first video, there's not a single bad word about Zelensky or the authorities, since I ended up in the same boat as him. An aggressor attacked, and we stand united. But when Putin's army was pushed back, when Istanbul was rejected, I saw what the officials started to do. They were already on their own deserted island while you're crawling somewhere else. Understand? And then I started to speak a little differently. That's why I give him credit for everything that happened in the first months of the war. I mean it. What you said, I don't deny. But everything that started after that was just something else. And what he did before the war as president, he didn't do anything good, really. He didn't do anything in 3 years. That shouldn't be forgotten either. I'll tell you even more. The war saved Zelensky politically. The oligarchs were preparing a Maidan. He had a 20% approval rating after 73. There would have been a Maidan in spring 2022, if not for the war. There was a difficult situation with energy resources, with gas and with the economy. There were major protests over the economy. They were raising taxes and so on. And so on. So you see, I had nothing against Zelensky until he started interfering with the family. That's when I really started to dislike Zelensky.
Or something like that.
Is Poroshenko behaving poorly? I comment, speak out, and offer suggestions. My reform program is available online. Zelensky does what he does. I speak out against him, but I stand for Ukraine, not just against Zelensky. You could say I give him advice. If he listened to it, the situation would be different, especially with the United States presidential elections.
So, you know what I just thought, Dennis? This is one of those rare cases. Just like Gennady Balashov, when you live or lived in Ukraine recently, you understand the situation of Ukrainian society, its desires, its mentality, its nuances. And you've been living in America, in American society for several years now. How many years has it been?
Dennis, 3
years. And you understand, you can look at this situation both from the inside and from afar. Yes, and such an opportunity. This is not Gordon, this is not Portnikov, and so on and so on. And I'm not specifically naming these people. I'm saying people like them. And that's why and of course, how should I put it? Sympathy for you. Well, on my part, you haven't seen what people wrote about the fact that you mentioned Gennady and what their attitude is. When ordinary people, not politicians, wrote, they expressed regret. Today, a woman wrote something that moved me to tears. For me, that's a thread connecting us. Also, as I said, I'd be very grateful to you First of all, thank you for today. We took up a lot of your time. I saw that you already recorded a stream this morning.
I didn't know anything about your family or what's happening in Ukraine.
To say that it's disgusting is an understatement. And I want your mom to be alive and healthy and all your loved ones too. And that's absolutely sincere from the bottom of my heart. I have no reason to be dishonest. I would really ask you, Dennis, if you come to visit us sometimes so that you could hear my point of view. There are such long forgotten words as truth, honesty, dignity. These words may sound pretentious today, well, for some people, but not for me. So if you have the time, the desire, and the mood, we would be very happy to see you. Thank you very much.
Dennis, thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.